Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this event. I'm super excited to join forces with MAAS in the first event that we have in Africa this year. Unfortunately, we can't have it live, but it is what it is. Today, we have super interesting topics to discuss about Africa, mobile landscape, ecosystem, growth opportunities. And I'll start off by introducing our panelists. So instead of me introducing one by one, I'll let each one introduce himself. Today is a panelist made out of professionals, each one in his field. And I think we're up for a super interesting ride. So I'll start with myself. My name is Idan. I lead AppsFlyer Partner Development Team in EMEA. I'm in charge of AppsFlyer partnerships across different regions. But prior to this role, I was in charge of AppsFlyer sales and business development in Africa for 2 years. Super excited to see here in the chat and in the crowd some of our existing clients and customers, and moving it to Ankit Rawal from MAAS.
Thanks, Idan. Hello, everyone. My name is Ankit Rawal, and I lead sales and marketing for Affle's MAAS. MAAS is a unified audience platform where we help app marketers to acquire users at scale, and I'll share a little bit more during the course of the discussion. But interestingly, my journey with Africa is almost, I think the safari started way back in 2008, 2009. It was my first stint, international travel to South Africa. And this was the era of Nokias. This was the era of please call me. If many of you are old enough, you'll remember 2008, 2009. Or when M-Pesa had just launched in Kenya by Safaricom. And I've been associated with Africa, whether it is the football FIFA in 2010, was it the Masai Mara travel in Kenya, or even to Lagos, etc. So I've been really associated with the African continent, and super excited here to bring perspective of what we are seeing at Affle MAAS across some of the other markets, whether it is here in India, where I'm based out of, or other emerging markets like Southeast Asia, LATAM, and see how I can really help some of our app marketers in Africa learn from that and not reinvent the wheel, is what our endeavor is today with this panel. So thanks again for joining in, and maybe I'll pass the baton to Shaun.
Thanks, Ankit. Thank you for having me on the panel today. Super excited to speak with all my fellow panelists and any questions we might have. So I'm Shaun Rosen. I'm the founder and CEO of Mobiclicks. We started in the mobile space about 15, 16 years ago, and we've known Ankit probably since then as well. And as you said, it's been really interesting seeing the evolution of mobile and just digital in South Africa and Africa over the last couple of years, from where we started on mobile web on third-party like ad networks to where we are today with some of the most advanced apps in the fintech and social spaces. It's really an exciting place to be in, and we obviously try and help as many of our client partners and agencies navigate this space. And we look forward to speaking more about this in the discussion. But thank you for having me.
Cool. Kwezi, you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Idan. First off, I want to say hello to everyone. My name is Kwezi Ngcukana. I lead growth for Mr. D Food. Some of you might know the brand. It dates back to 1992. And it was only in 2016 where we, created our first app. At that point in time, we then switched off, the core channel, which was people, using their phones to order food. Prior to the app, essentially, we're doing less than 10,000 orders per month. And, with the app, as things currently stands, we do over 2 million, transactions on the app. So that's me.
Great, thanks, Kwezi. Joel?
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here with the panelists. My name is Joel Rao, CEO of iProspect, Isobar and Merkle. Really focusing a lot on app marketing for this webinar. One of the things that we've been able to do in this market is really focus primarily on app marketing for clients like Absa and Safaricom through the different payment gateways that they're using. And I'm really excited to share whatever trends we saw in 2021 and what 2022 will hold.
Perfect, thanks. And Benjamin, Dada.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Super excited to be here as well. My name is Benjamin Dada, and I currently lead country expansion for an API fintech called Stitch. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time writing about the African tech ecosystem while I sat in Lagos, Nigeria. Looking forward to this conversation and meeting everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So as you can see, we have here panelists from all across the digital marketing ecosystem, and we have great topics, and let's just jump in. As AppsFlyer, we are the attribution authority, and we see a lot of traffic. And in 2021, we had a big research when we saw an increase, a huge increase in app downloads in Africa. We also see a large number of startup rising, right? Massive fundings coming into Africa. Companies like Kuda, Opay, TimeBank, Flutterwave. And also we see a trend of traditional banks and telcos joining the app economy and focusing there, right? VodaPay, NetBank, and more. Now, a lot is brewing in the African app ecosystem. And my question to you guys is, what do you think are the top contributing factors for this? And for the sake of the discussion, I'll let Ankit, please, you can go first.
Thanks, Idan. So again, it's a confluence of multiple things, I feel, why this uprising is happening. One, obviously, is the penetration of a lot of these OEMs and affordable OEMs, whether it is from Transient, Huawei, to some of the other ones like Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo in different parts of Africa. And with that, you have relatively cheaper internet. So as I was saying, I've been traveling a lot to the continent. From what I see in 2009, 2010 to almost a decade later, it is much more affordable accessibility. Still not the cheapest, I'll say, vis-a-vis what we see here, say in India, but still it is much more affordable. So that is one anchor point, which is really letting a lot of these apps really pilfer, because there's an addressable market of consumers. Coupled with it, also, as you know, there is a lot of capital coming in, right? So there's a democratization of access to technology. There's democratization of access to talent, which is really helping this. And then there's capital, which is easily available. We saw the kind of funding a lot of app ecosystem players, both in South Africa, rest of Africa, have really raised, is also one of the big contributing factor. The population is much more younger. They have understanding of technology is much more better than, say, an older generation. All those are some of those factors which are contributing to this. And I think the last but the very important part, obviously, is COVID. I think COVID has been a big accelerator for adoption of technology, right? In a normal course, we would have had this event like this in person, but we've been now used to doing these kinds of webinars across the globe, not just, say, here in Africa, but across the globe. That's the new medium where geographies become history now. And I think reminds me of a very interesting quote by Lenin, which said several years ago that there are decades when nothing happens and there are weeks when decade happen. And I think COVID has been one such catalyst where a lot of adoption of these technologies is happening across fintech, across education, across health tech, all over the globe, and also here in Africa.
Thanks, Ankit. COVID indeed accelerated all the digital transformation in mobile. And, there's many challenging and frustrating things about this situation. But if I look at the positive side, it helps us bring this kind of panel together from people around the world, addressing people in different countries. Each one can join from their computer, and the world became more connected. And I think this is one of the good things to pass the education. I'd like maybe also, Joel, if you want to put...
Yeah, thanks, Idan. One of the things we noticed, there's always that saying that, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So one of the things that has really necessitated, a lot of apps within this ecosystem to actually grow and get funded is the fact that from a financial standpoint, we do have a very large population of unbanked people. And that's why fintechs are making a lot of headway in this scope of things. In Nigeria, for example, last year alone, every 2 hours, $1 million was raised for a startup in Nigeria. Across the continent, more than double the investment came in last year compared to 2020. And we see that, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt leading the way. And it's because when you look at, populations within these markets, especially when you talk about fintech, you do have a very large unbanked population. So it's really clear that, there's a massive, massive opportunity. It's not just that, but when you look at the overall outside fintech, when you look at the overall ecosystem for apps, one of the things that has come out really clearly is that convenience has actually played a very big part in changing consumer behavior. So, we say today that we're living in a convenience economy, whereby people just want to order stuff directly. And as Ankit mentioned, smartphones have really necessitated that. And within the app ecosystem, then it becomes very clear that people are beginning to appreciate that they can get things conveniently. So when you think about a Bolt or a Jumia or an Uber, for example, that convenience economy plays a very big part in what we do. And I see this continuing to grow into 2022.
Thanks. Super insightful. So yeah, I'm taking it forward. So the fintech is a trend that we saw so far, and the number that you mentioned are incredible in the investment in Nigeria. And we know that Africa is an emerging market that is going into the mobile first approach, right? Many of those fintech apps. And the question is, what are some of the interesting app trends that you forecast to dominate in 2022 and upwards? Shaun, maybe you can take it.
Yeah, thanks, Idan. I think what Joel's mentioned is the necessity and also the convenience factor. And I think what's happened over time because of the pandemic is people have realized that it's actually not that difficult to transact from your phone, and it's pretty convenient. So that together with us having lockdowns and the ability not to go places, people shifted their behavior to maybe, especially banking. Banking has always been pretty big on mobile, but I think this really accelerated it. But my prediction is I think we're going to start seeing a lot more ordering, people ordering from their smartphones, not leaving the house to get things like groceries. And all these like smaller convenient things, instead of having to get into a car, go to a busy market, even hopefully when COVID ends, I think behaviors have shifted. It's just so much easier to press a button, on your phone and get something delivered to you. So I think that that's kind of the way forward in this economy, is where we're going to see people using their smartphones a lot more for transactional purposes.
Yeah, thanks. And that correlates 100% with the last research that we also just published, that we see the shopping apps as the one that will dominate or will grow the most in 2022. And we saw in the last year of 2021, many app downloads in many kind of shopping verticals. It's the number 2 vertical after finance. But the interesting thing is that, today we see more app transactions, exactly like you mentioned. We call it in-app events, right? People in the beginning downloaded an app and were a bit cautious or wouldn't be so open into purchase or do activities within the app. And we see this changing and it brings a huge opportunity for retailers and for brick and mortar companies that are targeting a digital audience. And I am very eager to hear, Kwezi, how you think about it.
Yes, Shaun, for sure. I think the broader context is obviously, within the backdrop of fintech. The fact that last year the top 8 funded startups were in the fintech vertical is a testament to that. And essentially, if you think about the infrastructure needed to really power e-commerce, it's really about enabling, those transactions to happen. And I'm very excited to see that there's more investment going into the fintech space. It means that, from a user point of view, we're essentially going to have more users who are comfortable making transactions because they're guaranteed that it's going to be secure. And also from an adoption point of view, it does mean that for a number of startups who are then going to want to be, the secondary entities into this ecosystem, it's going to make it very, very easy for them to really, gain massive scale in those transactions. I mean, for Mr. D, we've seen what access to credit cards means. And obviously for South Africa, we're slightly ahead of the curve in terms of Africa. Like if you look at Nigeria, if you look at Kenya, where mobile money is growing substantially. And if you follow MTN Momo, their version of mobile money, they're basically still struggling to gain the traction in South Africa. But what this means is that given the security of mobile money, it doesn't matter whether it's M-Pesa or it's Momo or it's any other app. The more people we have on these financial banking apps, the more e-commerce is going to thrive. So I'm basically looking forward to that. And I think in terms of 2022, I see more first-time e-commerce users, right? Because again, we're now having this immense investment. There's well-funded fintech companies, and they're actually enabling financial inclusion in the market.
Thanks.
If you allow me 2 minutes, Idan, an interesting point we are also seeing in other emerging markets like India, Southeast Asia, which I feel will definitely come in Africa, is that even e-commerce is breaking down into more verticals. So previously, e-commerce was largely like a Take-A-Lot or a Jumia, which is around horizontals or say food delivery. But hyper-local services, for example, are growing, whether it is grocery delivery or even meat delivery. So for example, here in India, there are these D2C brands which are only focusing on fresh meat, and they are becoming unicorns. Then there is this whole category of medical supplies, etc., where you're doing pharmacy delivery around both chronic as well as over-the-counter kind of drugs. They are growing, and many of them are becoming quite big, both here in India and Indonesia. And then the last but very interesting part is quick commerce. So where the delivery happens in less than 15 minutes or less. And there are across, at least both in India and now in Indonesia, 4-5 different players like a Blinkist or a Zepto or Astro Groceries in Indonesia. So one, obviously, is the horizontals growing, but also further verticalization is happening in the commerce. And that trend will also come in Africa, I assume, this year and beyond.
Thanks. Super interesting. Yeah, and the next question is a fascinating topic that, from working in across different regions in Africa, we see it booming, and I'd like to speak about the super apps. Okay, there's a new term, right? Super apps that emerged, I think, in Africa, and it's not only new, but also existing apps are now moving to adopt this kind of new model, like Alan, Rosen, M-Pesa, SafeBoda, Ngcukana. Now, what do you think are the reasons for this adoption of a super app? And interestingly, this super app phenomenon, right? Has happened in China and WeChat and Grab and Gojek in Southeast Asia. And I'm wondering if Africa is just, catching up on this global phenomenon. I mean, is it a fad or forever for Africa? And, why and why not? And Shaun, yeah, happy to hear from you.
So yeah, Idan, I think it is a really interesting topic, the super app. And like you said, you've seen the trends in China and other places. And I think why somebody wants to do it is they want to try and own as much of that customer's mobile wallet as well as attention as possible. So you've got somebody that's already signed up for a fintech or banking app and they connected their wallet now. So it would make sense to say to them, stay within this environment. Why not order your groceries? Why not call an Uber? You've got everything in this one space. And I think it makes sense to have like one app to be able to transact like that from, first of all, like even a space on your phone, like not to have multiple apps where you could do it from one app. I think the one challenge though, because we're still quite, in the startup phases here in South Africa and Africa is just trust. So, there are people that are using multiple apps for multiple reasons. Somebody uses one app for groceries, some person uses one app for their banking. Not everybody wants to put all their eggs into one basket just yet. But I do think that over time, there definitely will be that consolidation where it becomes, more of an easier user journey just to use one app for certain things. But yeah, I think we're not there yet, but I do think that it will become similar to other markets where that will start happening.
Great, thanks. Benjamin, I've been reading your blogs for a while now, learning about the Africa tech space, etc. And you've been a bit quiet here, so I'll be happy to hear your thoughts about super apps and if it's here to stay or to go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, we can look at this from two lenses, right? One is the people producing the super apps, and two is the people consuming the super apps, right? From the production side, I think the question is, at what point should you start expanding your vertical to cover more horizons, right? So if you started in logistics, at what point in your business do you need to start offering maybe e-commerce or food delivery or banking? Do you understand? So like different startups are at different stages. If we break them down into four, so early growth, maturity, and then maybe hopefully no decline. But at what point in that journey do you begin to think of closing in on that ecosystem? So like what Shaun was mentioning, that many people are trying to keep their customers within their ecosystem and going wide without going deep. And at the end of the day, you would end up not being known for anything at all because you've tried to spread yourself too thin, right? And then on the second hand is, do the consumers want a super app? And that's like also something Shaun mentioned, right? Like, do people want to keep all their eggs in one basket, or do rather have specialist apps for different things they want to do? So I think for a long time in Africa, we're still going to see a lot of debate, or we're going to see a lot of on the fence of people trying to decide, should I do a super app? Is now the time to do a super app? Do I want to be known for one thing, or I want to be a jack of all trades? I think over time, super apps will probably emerge as a result of consolidation. And I know, we are chatting about how I see either investors or new holding companies coming to bring two apps who are specialists in different things together. But to say that we're going to have one app be the winner, I don't think we'll see any winner in the next 5 to 10 years because the ecosystem is still young and many people are still trying to build even their core service offering.
Interesting. So you're saying that maybe we should look at super apps from the VCs kind of point. Maybe they will have the influence on different apps joining forces together. Okay, super interesting.
Idan, I wanna throw a spanner in the works for this conversation, and I like what Benjamin has said. But let's think about it like this, from a consumer standpoint. One of the things that, I've been studying, and I think dentsu also just did a report of that sort of thing in the past, whereby in the next, 8 to 10 years, especially on the continent here, people are looking at, financial services, healthcare, shopping as an all-in-one service, because these are regarded as lifestyle-driven services. So if I can go to a one-stop shop that provides me with all this, services, then from a consumer lifestyle perspective, then it makes it very easy for me to be able to engage. And I would want to believe that this would actually apply in the app ecosystem. But that's just my take. It would be nice to also hear when we have the Q&A with the consumers, with the listeners, what their thoughts are around this.
Joel, I think actually, you're raising a very interesting angle there, because there could then be a view that says maybe it's not about a super app. I mean, if you were to take your smartphone and travel through time and go to 1990 and show someone your iPhone, they'll probably call it a super app, right? So essentially, I'm then thinking that what is probably essential is how do we provide complementary services within any ecosystem? So if you look at Ioba, they have started with what seems to be a WhatsApp, but obviously they know that once they've captured their audience, the next question is what next can I offer that's going to be of benefit, right? So they're starting with music. People are chatting. It's almost a natural extension. Hey, I'm listening to Drake. There you go, right? So there's already an ecosystem that can basically gravitate towards wanting more service that are going to be complementary. And then the same, can be done for the mobile money applications, where you start with a way of allowing people to bank and transfer funds to their families, to make payments and so on. But actually a more natural extension is, simple, let me buy airtime, right? Let me start paying my bills on the app. So I think for me, it's not necessarily going to be the super app as what we've seen through WeChat, where obviously there was many government intervention in ensuring that WeChat as a super app was actually quite successful. So I think we're not going to have another WeChat type of super app, but we are going to have apps that have complementary services where it makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of pros, right? In having one place where you trust and you use and it's easier for you as a consumer. There's a lot of, we're not speaking in this webinar about privacy, security, compliances, and there's a lot of things that need to be taken care of at this kind of space as well. But yeah, if we dive into this, it would take the rest of the questions. So we spoke about super apps. I want to ask you something about verticals. Okay, in the last report we spoke about it, we saw a huge increase in 2021. 60% of the increase came from, as Joel mentioned, finance, fintech. We see what's happening in Nigeria, and it's implementing on everything. Second vertical that we saw growing, surprisingly enough, is shopping. And as I mentioned, we do see this trend growing. And as Shaun mentioned, it's coming from only downloads, and people are trusting the app more and doing some purchases and in-app activities. And my question is, how do you see these two categories? Fintech, which is e-wallets, crypto, money transfer, etc., and shopping, how do you see them evolve in the region in terms of user acquisition and monetizations? And apart from these verticals, do you see any other verticals that we should look at in 2022? Ankit, I think you can go.
Thanks, Idan. So I think firstly, you very rightly hit the nail on the head, where fintech is not just one category. There are multiple categories interestingly, one of the category which is growing very much again from emerging markets is buy now, pay later. And these are the kind of sub verticals which may eventually say replace credit cards, especially in markets like us, because we have the whole challenge about banking the unbanked or banking the underbanked. So I think buy now, pay later kind of use cases will definitely prevalent in Africa across the board, because again, similar ecosystems apply here in India or even Southeast Asia. One of the other interesting outcome of COVID, at least here, has been around trading apps. So imagine you are locked down, you are young demography, you have nothing else to spend money. You start dabbling into cryptocurrencies or stock assets. So what we've seen in the fintech category particularly, and again, not just here in India, but even in Vietnam, for example, trading apps where you have zero broking trading apps really skyrocket. And it's adding a lot of younger demographic people across the board. And similar apps, again, if there's no one currently in, say, South Africa or Nigeria, there's a huge opportunity for those kind of subcategories within fintech. And outside that, as you were saying, like which other category which will start coming up, I think education is one big category which can really become big, again, because of the issue around affordability, accessibility, very similar to other emerging markets. And you're seeing that, right? So, for example, here in India, there are companies like Byju's, which is actually quite big now. It's like a decacorn, not just a unicorn, but a decacorn. And there are similar apps around targeting K+12, which is students who could not go to school because classes were shut, or test preparation sites, because in a lot of our countries, gateway to higher education is through an examination. And these apps help you prepare for those examination or even outside learning. And we are seeing that happening again here in India or Indonesia, like a Ruang Guru kind of apps, which are really becoming very big. So I think education tech is another category. And again, I know some of our app ecosystem players like ULessons are doing a lot of interesting work. That will definitely grow in 22 and beyond.
Great, thanks. So from the global perspective, which is super interesting and maybe can forecast what we can see in Africa, I'd like to hear, Benjamin, maybe from you about how you see the different verticals, the trends, and what you see in 2022.
Absolutely. I think just to even touch on fintech and shopping, the intersection of fintech and shopping is usually payments. So now, whether the payment is going to come in the form of buy now, pay later, or insurance for the goods you bought, we would see all of that unravel. So what we're beginning to see is a lot of companies, either from an embedded finance play, are launching to service that e-commerce or shopping opportunity, right? So you say, you can do a one-click checkout on your commerce app. You can do this, you can do that. So we would see a lot more attempts at, easing the payment experience for e-commerce and shopping in Africa. From an emerging vertical, I would say health tech. But most times when people hear health tech, they think of EMRs, electronic medical record. But this is more about like personalized services, teletherapy, and things that COVID just helped accelerate, right? So as the world is focusing more on mental health, even in the workplace, and just generally, like people are thinking of solutions that can help with therapy. So there's a startup in Nigeria called Nguvu Health that basically offers, sessions with experts for you to do either chat or video sessions, and then they price both differently, right? So we would see a lot more of those kind of approaches for the coming year.
Fascinating. Thanks. Yeah, so we see a lot of, we spoke about the why, right? There's a lot of why should apps grow? What's the opportunity here? Which verticals? But now we're touching a bit on the how, and we see that the role of agencies, right, in Africa is increasingly important, and also the line between branding and performance is blurring a little. And here we have top experts, from the agency field. And I'd like to ask, how are agencies helping these new startups in their app journey from, the very starting awareness stage to actions like sales, rides? And if you have example, that would be great. Joel, you can go first. Shaun, you can follow.
Yeah, I mean that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I mean we've definitely seen, well, we're seeing it threefold, Idan. So the first aspect is agencies playing a role, to come up, with some of the creative concepts on how these new apps can actually take root within their specific verticals. And then the second aspect is with regards to media amplification. So amplification of whether it's brand marketing or performance marketing, that's something that agencies are playing a role in. And then the third thing, which I think is really, really fascinating, is the customer experience side of things, whereby we're looking at consumer experience management the moment the consumer lands on the app and they have all these experiences within the app. So I see that being played in three ways. Now, to your earlier comment, the blurring of lines, yes, indeed, the lines are being blurred to the point whereby, I would look at, 5 to 10 years ago, we had the emergence of and the thriving of specialist agencies that would be able to do, whether it's performance marketing or whether it's creative or whether it's customer experience management and so on and so forth. What you're beginning to see, at least from a media amplification standpoint, is it's a yin and a yang. You need both of those to actually play a role to be able to be successful in driving that. And one example that I had was we did have a couple of years ago, we did have a company called Glovo that came to Kenya. And one of the things that, and this is at the height of performance marketing being what it is. And I remember the client being very open and saying, what if we actually just ran YouTube ads for branding purposes, and we'll paint YouTube, yellow being the brand colors of Glovo, and let's see what happens. And then we'll layer that on top with whatever performance marketing activity we do. And it was a very interesting hypothesis, because what we got to realize quite quickly is that for you to be able to drive any form of behavioral change, to have people look at Glovo as a convenience app because they do shopping, they do food orders, and so on and so forth. One thing that came out quite clearly was that because of that repetitive top of mind awareness activity that was going on, it was easy for us to be able to influence our performance marketing tactics to actually work harder for us, as opposed to just diving straight into, performance marketing. And, branding actually does play a very, very big role. And obviously then layering that together with, what the creative would do, or what, from a customer experience management standpoint, UI, UX being a very clear win within that app environment, it becomes a fascinating evolution of what marketing can be able to do for a business like that. And so for us, it was quite interesting, to see, a client just saying, what, let's focus on branding first. Let's get it right. Let's drive that top of mind awareness. Let's spend money. And it was, serious budget, for all intents and purposes. And then performance marketing just becomes easier as we go along. And I'm sure, Kwezi, you'll agree with me, from a Mr. D standpoint, at least when I was in Joburg, I would see, what was happening there. And I think it's a notion that's actually just being taken up as we go along. But, over to you, Idan.
Yeah, I think, marketing is science, right? And you have to get the data right, and you have to invest also to get your things right. And, it connects me to measurement also and to attribution. There's a new app coming. They have limited amount of dollars. They can spend it themselves, or they can take right decisions, and they can prepare wide and pick the right agencies to work with and right on the right strategy. And you have to look, on the long term to build this growth strategy. Yeah, over to you, Shaun. Just 1 second before, for the audience, we have one more question about agencies, which Shaun I will answer, and then we will get to the super interesting part on the how, user acquisition. And yeah, Shaun, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to add on to what Joel is saying, I agree 100% that there's a journey here. So first of all, we need to create the awareness. I mean, you need to use, the top of line kind of marketing, the usual out there, just to get that app out there, to gain the trust. It can't just go ahead and launch an app and expect people to download it. I think build that trust. So, over time, as you're doing that, I think the journey, which is interesting, then shifts into digital. So it might not start in digital straight away. It might start on other mediums. And then as it hits onto digital, I think, like you're saying, that's where kind of the science starts. That's where we start looking at things like behavior, like where did they click on it? What Apple site were they on when they saw this? What are their interests? And then comes the whole retargeting, getting people back and saying to them, we noticed that you were interested in this fintech app. Why don't you download it? And just bringing them down that funnel, is quite a science, I think. And then exactly what we're getting in is tracking that, because without that tracking and measurement, you're kind of like shooting in the dark. And I think you'll end up wasting a lot of money because you're assuming like things are working. Whereas if you've got a good tracking partner from the beginning and you've got someone that understands that data, it makes that transition so much easier and so much more successful. So I think that's the role that we need to play, and say to customers, listen, we understand the journey, we understand that it takes time to get that user in, and then again, like the last step, which I think we'll get into now, is it's all very well that they've downloaded the app. Like, are they using it? Are they transacting on it? Are they doing anything further from there? And I think that's where a whole new role of marketing comes in to get them to actually use the different functionality.
Exactly. So it's nice to have, there's many stages. It's nice to have people download the app, but now how do you monetize it? How do you track the in-app event? How do you grow engagements? And Kwezi, the head of growth, very interested to hear from you a little bit about user acquisition, right? There's, let's open it. And here's just some best practices on how you guys do user acquisition, what works, what less, channels, creative insights, something that the audience can learn from.
100%, sure. I mean, it's a big topic, lots of detail, lots of budget when you want to get results. But essentially, I think I'm just going to touch on call it a simplified framework of 4 elements, right? And Joel already touched on the brand. So I think the first one is it's really know your story and tell your story well. So your customers needs to be aware of your services. We're now talking brand, right? You can choose your channels from YouTube to display, but essentially if your brand is not known, there's no amount spent on performance marketing that's going to help you scale, right? The second one is around attribution and measurement, right? So this is super, super critical because oftentimes, brands are spending huge amounts on performance marketing. And if you are not clear what is really driving impact, driving results, you're essentially wasting your money. So privacy has essentially became one of the biggest challenge in terms of attribution. So my biggest advice to both corporates and startups is that you need to invest in AI, particularly predictive analytics. So this will help you fill the gaps, right? Because the goal from an attribution point of view is to have an end-to-end view of your customer. But with privacy, it means that there's going to be plenty of gaps in our attribution model. So you need to fill that gap with predictive models. And then the third one is around your channel mix. Like I talk to different people, colleagues, in different sectors. And essentially, I get very surprised when you are driving, as an organization, you are driving an app and more than 50% of your budget is spent on Google. Right, that's super inefficient. So you're probably looking to spend anything between 30 and 40 just on Google, and you want to focus on programmatic channels, right? Because your customers are spending time on real assets, right? They are on gaming sites, they're on social media sites, right? So you almost need to work with a couple of partners that are going to help you reach those different customers. So you want to ensure that you move away from the easy accessible platform that is Google and think about how can you work with a broader set of channels, because the more diverse, the more you'll be able to optimize your acquisition cost overall. And then the last one, which I think is potentially the most important and the most overlooked across many organizations, it's around testing and learning, right? So if you are not testing from creative to your UX, to your buttons, to the actual content that your influencers are posting on TikTok, again, you are missing out on a huge opportunity of gaining incremental benefits on your return on investment. So I think, Eden, those would be the 4 things, if organizations are able to really have proper processes and, they can follow through on those 4 elements, I think it will be quite beneficial for their user acquisition strategies.
Totally. And predictions, it's funny enough, we are 49 minutes in this event and it's a mobile focused event and we haven't mentioned iOS 14, the word didn't come out. And when prediction is spoken about is, the world has changed and we're limited in the data, which we know usually we had data of what happened, each user, what did they engage with, when and how, and today it's very limited and we have to make different kind of AI, as you mentioned, to predict what will happen and to be more advanced and to do incremental testing. So I think these tips are, straight to the point and very helpful for the panel, for the attendees. So thank you for that, Kwezi. I see there's many questions in the crowd and we're 10 minutes before. So Ankit, if you would like maybe to, let's say a few words and then we can see if we can address some questions.
Yep, absolutely. I just want to drill down on one part which Kwezi mentioned is around channels, right? And a lot of us in the app audience or app marketers are still very early in our evolution, and we are trying to make sure that delivery is happening on time and UI UX is good. So how do you really optimize for conversion? Because that's a very classical problem. And today the challenge is there are so many channels, right? So there is Google, obviously UAC, then there is Facebook, and there are other social channels. Now there's TikTok, there is Snap. Then there are these DSPs, there are ad networks, affiliates, influencer marketing, for example, is quite big. And this could really become like a maze. And if it's not at your core, right? Because this is a chore to achieve business outcomes like sales or deliveries. How do you really manage this maze? I think is a very important part. And that's where, like if I can say, we are trying to become a super app within the MAAS ecosystem where we aggregated all these channels. And when we work with partners, and I can happily say Kwezi is our partner, where we really give us the business outcome, like this is my cost per first order, and we try to manage, and we are the subject matter experts. So I think for a lot of folks who are starting their UA journey, it is very important that you know that you don't have to do everything. There are subject matter experts, people who've done there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You should leverage us, etc. And I'll give one very silly but very important example. Right? And again, Kwezi mentioned around creatives and A/B testing. And we've been running a lot of campaigns across different geographies, different verticals, and small things like how do you do A/B testing in terms of where do you put the product image, where do you put the CTA? Can you create a little bit of FOMO by doing time discount that this is only till end of seasons last or end of day or only that many pieces left? All that drives much better CVRs and click-through rates. Can you create some kind of exclusivity, for example, right? So these are like, especially for premium products, only available to say Prime members or who are prosumers or part of a community. So small things. I think there's no one single bullet to have like the cheapest CPI at the maximum scale, because that's typically what an app marketer is looking for. But a confluence of small things around creative, channel mix, using a lot of re-engagement, retargeting, because once you've got the user, but how do you make sure that they sticks with the app? How do you do, say, basic things around re-engagement, push notifications? It's a confluence of all those things which really make you deliver on business outcome, and you are not alone. The good part, I think, within African app ecosystem is that these kinds of challenges have been sorted by, say, an AppsFlyer on the measurement side, agency partners who work with similar players, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and don't make the obvious mistakes. Maybe make new mistakes, but all the existing ones can be easily sorted out by set of folks who've been there, done that kind of thing, I will say, which will be really helpful for the app marketers.
Cool. Thanks, Ankit. And I want to add to that. We had exactly simultaneously the question about someone asking, I'm an early stage startup. Is this the right time to engage with UA activities? And I think you kind of answered that. But I want to emphasize here. Part of, some of you seen us in different events, even myself, and part of what we're doing here as well is to educate the market and to give tools, knowledge, insights to app developers, early stage people who are thinking into growing or focusing on their mobile activities. And I think this is the place, because the place is to really get insights, which we got today, amazing tips from top experts, and to see that this field it's a big opportunity, huge opportunity. Mobile is growing, it will keep growing every year, but there are challenges and it's not easy, and there's different, and the ecosystem is changing, and we're here to support and answer questions. And yeah, thank you for that. I know Benjamin is soon leaving. So Benjamin, I was wondering if you want to answer one question about what are the top channels to leverage for acquiring users in Africa? That's a question that just came here.
That wasn't the question I had in mind. I just wanted to make a comment on agency.
No problem.
For a while, I worked with a startup that also worked with agencies. And before then, I realized that I hadn't actually worked with startups that were doing performance marketing. So, you just mentioned something I wanted to say about education. Agencies that operate in Africa are suffering from, number one, perception of what paid marketing is, and whether it's even useful for their business, right? And number two, they are suffering from budgets. So because there is no favorable perception of marketing, there's usually no budget to actually run those campaigns, talk less of even be able to pay agency fee. So I think as we continue to educate the market with webinars like these, blog posts, I know we wrote one together, Idan, last year on just user acquisition strategies for African apps. I think the market will begin to expand in possibilities for performance marketing, digital ads, and other forms of paid marketing. Just to drop one comment on the top channels to leverage for acquiring users in Africa. That depends on the products you're offering. I've seen people who offer fintech and lifestyle products go for influencer marketing, because they know once your favorite influencer should endorse or use that app, the fans are more likely to follow. So if you look at it, in Nigeria, we've had at least 4 or 5 brand ambassadorship announcements. So Burna Boy is a partner to Cheaper Cash, which is a fintech. Flutterwave just signed Wizkid, which is also one of the biggest in Africa and even internationally. We have RiseVerse signing Tenny. We have a bunch of people looking to influencer marketing, especially for the fintech and anything more lifestyle related. And then there'll be other means for acquiring users in Africa. I'll let my other co-panelists share on that. So thank you guys for having me.
Sure.
I'll make a quick one.
Sure, thank you. So I want to echo that and, connect it to what Kwezi just mentioned before about Google. And I see that there's a question about Google as a channel. So my comment is a broad comment. What we spoke about is that you have to test, right? You have to see what works for your app, and you have to test different channels, different ways to get to your audiences. You have to do some kind of incremental testing, and that means to check different kind of network that will help you get more users and more engagement. And of course, not rely only on 1 or 2 partners, but to see what works best for you. I'll let one of the experts answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can comment on this too. What's really interesting, the test and learn aspect is really important. And I'll give a real life example actually from a client, whereby a client said, I don't have budget, so I'll do feet on street, and I'll pair it with a bit of, you know, digital performance marketing activity. And you know, it was obviously it's a banking client. You know, they wanted to actually onboard customers on an online banking product. What was really interesting, you know, coupled with the right attribution partner, as well as the different channel partners that we were running with, we actually got to realize that, or rather, client came back and said, "Why am I spending money on digital marketing yet my feet on street is bringing me the customers at a very low cost per acquisition?" And that was great. But when we went in and dug deep into the attribution side of things, and we looked at the lifetime values of customers who came in through digital channels vis-a-vis through feet on street, we actually got to realize that the funding rates were night and day. It was like north and south, because the people who were being onboarded from feet on street were just onboarding on the product to just get rid of the guy who's selling them a product, while the people who actually got acquired through a proper digital funnel, you know, ended up, you know, working very closely with the bank, and, you know, funding rates are much, much higher. And it just goes to show you that when it comes to user acquisition, there's the user acquisition aspect of it, but, you know, you need to think beyond user acquisitions and focusing on what the lifetime value of the consumer that you have within your ecosystem is going to be. And so just having the right measurement partner is going to be really important for that. And then the moment you understand over time, because we are constantly learning, you're constantly testing and learning, it's going to be important for you to be able to understand what channels, including offline channels, are, you know, driving that incremental lifetime value of that customer that you have. And at the end of the day, that's what we really want. It's not just to get more users, but to get more quality users repeatedly using our platforms. And that's really why I see the value coming in.
Yeah, to see holistically what kind of all of your activities, how do you drive more value, more revenue into the app? We're 1 minute before the end. Kwezi, Shaun, if you want to add each one a few sentences.
I think for Paul, I mean, I'm not sure what particular product or service you are working with, but essentially I can assure you that for me, Google, from a cost per acquisition point of view, is not the top performer. From a scale point of view, definitely you can get more scale, but essentially from a percentage point of view, it's not really pushing that much scale. And essentially what I do, you need to work with your programmatic partners. I mean, we're on the platform, they've organized this session, Airful. We also use Remerge, we use Edge 222. So there's plenty of, you know, partners from a performance marketing point of view, also from a remarketing or re-engagement point of view, where you can access different inventory, where access that inventory on Google alone. And oftentimes, and I was not referring to social specifically, for myself, social within Mr. D is probably between 10 and 15%. It's not a major contributor. And yes, it can get expensive depending on what's your objective. For Mr. D, it's still comparable to all Google product. And by all Google product, I'm focusing on UAC and ACE.
Wow, thanks for sharing, Kwezi. Shaun, before I let you, conclude this event, I want to say that I see here a lot of questions, and if you have any more questions, feel free to reach to any one of us. You have us on LinkedIn or emails. It's not the end of the event and trainings. I mean, stay tuned. We're going to have different kind of events and actions with MAAS and in the market. And yeah, I'll let Shaun conclude, say the final words, and go ahead.
Thanks, Idan. Yeah, just to kind of sum up, I think what like Joel and Kwezi and Ankit and the guys have been saying is, I think that, you need a couple of things to get this right. You need to look at it from like different angles. And I think the most important thing is, like Kwezi was saying as well, is like to test and learn, right? So you need to be able to try different things and then more importantly, measure and make sure what you're doing is working, and then scale on the things that are working. So I think you just have to have the basics in place before you go on this journey to just kind of like think, I'm going to build the next unicorn, which obviously everyone wants to do. I think there's a science involved in working with the right partners, from agency to tracking to whatever it is really important part of the journey. So I would just encourage to take like a really methodical approach to it, and yeah, best of luck to everyone who's starting out.
Thank you so much, Shaun, and thank you everyone. MAAS, Ankit here, and Sid in the background and supporting and pulling this off with Diljit. Thank you so much for the amazing panelists and super interesting topics and discussions. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did, really. And yeah.
Thanks, Idan and the whole AppsFlyer team supporting us. And again, it's not the end, it's just the beginning, and we are still beginning of the year. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll try to also share the recording of it. If there are follow-on questions with any one of us, feel free to reach out to us.
One more thing I saw here in the comment, we do some good things. We need to improve in others. And right, we didn't have a woman panelist. I can guarantee that next event that we have, there will be also a woman panelist. Okay, so, thank you for the comment.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.